The Enfield Monster. I still remember the night it all began as if it happened yesterday. The unsettling events that unfolded in Enfield, Illinois, in 1973 are forever etched into my mind, and the horrors that ensued still haunt me. It was an unusually warm April evening, and the town was wrapped in a gentle twilight. I was home alone, my parents having left for the weekend to visit my ailing grandmother in Chicago. The quiet was interrupted only by the occasional rustling of leaves and the distant hum of a car passing by. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced eerily along the walls of my small bedroom, I felt an inexplicable unease settle over me. I tried to brush it off as mere imagination, but the sensation was persistent, gnawing at the back of my mind like an itch I couldn't scratch. Just as I was beginning to drift into an uneasy sleep, a loud thud echoed from the front porch. My heart skipped a beat, and my eyes snapped open. At first, I thought it was just a stray animal or maybe the wind, but when the noise repeated itself, this time accompanied by a low, guttural growl, I knew something was very wrong. I hesitated before getting out of bed, but curiosity got the better of me. Creeping down the hallway, I made my way to the front door. The house was eerily silent except for the pounding of my heart in my ears. I peered through the peephole, but the dim light outside revealed nothing unusual. Deciding to take a closer look, I cautiously opened the door, only to find deep gouges in the wooden porch, 3 parallel scratches as if made by a clawed hand. My stomach turned as I scanned the surroundings for any sign of what might have caused it. My eyes caught movement near the edge of the yard, where the light from the street lamp barely reached. There, standing just beyond the glow, was a figure unlike anything I had ever seen. It was hunched and grotesque, with 3 legs that supported a twisted, malformed body. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched taut over visible ribs. But it was the eyes that truly terrified me, red and glowing, filled with an unnatural intelligence and malice. Before I could react, the creature let out a spine-chilling screech and lunged toward the house with unnatural speed. Panic surged through me, and I slammed the door shut just in time to hear its claws rake against the wood with a sound that made my skin crawl. I stumbled backward, heart racing, and fumbled for the phone to call the police. My hands shook as I dialed, struggling to get a coherent sentence out when the operator finally picked up. "There's something outside my house," I stammered. "You need to send someone quickly." The police arrived in record time, but by then, the creature had vanished into the night, leaving behind only the deep gouges on the porch as evidence of its existence. The officers were skeptical, attributing my account to youthful imagination or perhaps a prank gone too far. But I knew what I had seen was real. News of the encounter spread through the town like wildfire, igniting a mixture of fear and skepticism among the residents. As the days went by, more sightings were reported, each more chilling than the last. People whispered about the Enfield Monster as if speaking its name would summon it, and a palpable tension hung over the town like a shroud. Some dismissed it as mass hysteria, while others claimed it was an omen of something far worse. I felt a growing sense of dread, a certainty that we were all caught in the grip of something beyond our understanding. But as the incidents escalated, it became clear that whatever this creature was, it was not going away. I became obsessed with finding out more, spending long nights poring over old newspapers and local legends. I was determined to uncover the truth behind the monster, even if it meant confronting the darkest corners of Enfield's history. Little did I know, the true horror was only just beginning, and the answers I sought would lead me down a path of unimaginable terror. The days following my first encounter with the creature were filled with unease. Despite the police patrols and neighborhood watches that sprang up, the feeling of being watched persisted. The town buzzed with anxious whispers and wild theories, but no one seemed to have any concrete answers. I spent my time digging into the local library archives, searching for any mention of strange occurrences or unexplained phenomena. The librarian, Mrs. Collins, a kindly woman in her 60s, noticed my frequent visits and the stack of dusty old newspapers I pored over. "Looking for something in particular, dear?" she asked one afternoon, her voice breaking the silence. "I'm trying to find out if anything like this has happened before," I replied, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "The creature, I mean." Mrs. Collins's eyes widened slightly, and she leaned closer. "Ah, the Enfield Monster. You're not the first to go searching, you know. There have always been stories." "What kind of stories?" I asked, intrigued. She motioned for me to follow her to a dimly lit corner of the library. There, she retrieved a thin, weathered book titled Legends and Lore of Southern Illinois. As she handed it to me, I noticed her hands trembled slightly. "This might help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Be careful, though. Some things are best left alone." I nodded, my curiosity piqued. I took the book to a nearby table and began to read. The tales within were filled with local legends, stories of ghostly apparitions, cursed lands, and strange beasts that lurked in the shadows. One story, in particular, caught my eye, the curse of the three-legged demon. The legend spoke of an ancient entity, a creature cursed to roam the earth with an insatiable hunger for fear and chaos. According to the tale, the creature could only be seen by those who were destined to confront it, and its presence was always accompanied by misfortune and death. As I read on, a chill ran down my spine. The description of the creature matched the monster I had seen that night on my porch. The thought of it being some ancient evil made my skin crawl. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the library into darkness. The silence was broken by the sound of something crashing to the floor in the next aisle. I jumped up, my heart pounding, and cautiously approached the source of the noise. As I rounded the corner, I saw a row of books scattered across the floor. At first, I thought it was just an accident, but then I noticed a shadow moving between the shelves. My breath caught in my throat as the shadow seemed to morph, elongating into a monstrous shape. A feeling of pure terror washed over me, and I stumbled back, colliding with a bookcase. The shadow vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the unsettling silence in its wake. I hurried back to the front desk, where Mrs. Collins was waiting with a flashlight. "Are you all right?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "I think so," I replied, trying to steady my breathing. But I saw something. A shadow. Mrs. Collins's expression turned grim. "It's happening again," she murmured. "Just like before." "Before?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "A long time ago, before you were born. There were similar sightings, similar fears. But then it stopped, as suddenly as it started." Her words hung heavy in the air. Could the monster be tied to something deeper, something the town had tried to forget? My mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Later that evening, I returned home, clutching the book to my chest as if it could protect me from the horrors I had uncovered. The house was dark and silent, but the oppressive feeling of being watched lingered, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond the walls. As I settled into bed, my thoughts churned with the possibilities of what the monster could be and why it had chosen to reveal itself now. Sleep was elusive, and when I finally did drift off, my dreams were plagued by visions of the creature's glowing eyes, watching me from the darkness. When I awoke in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the house was still and quiet. I reached for the glass of water on my nightstand, trying to shake off the lingering fear. But just as I was about to take a sip, I froze. A soft, scraping sound echoed from outside my window, like nails against glass. My heart leapt into my throat as I turned to look. There, framed by the pale moonlight, was the creature's ghastly face, its eyes locked onto mine. I screamed, scrambling back against the headboard, but when I blinked, the creature was gone, leaving only the ghost of its terrifying presence behind. That was when I knew I had become a target, and the monster wouldn't stop until it had claimed me, or worse. The true nightmare was only just beginning. The decision to explore the old mine weighed heavily on me, but I knew it was the only way to uncover the truth and put an end to the creature's reign of terror. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of grim determination, I set off into the woods, the path winding through the thick trees and underbrush like a twisting serpent. The air was heavy and oppressive, the shadows deepening as I ventured further into the forest. Every snap of a twig and rustle of leaves set my nerves on edge, but I pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was the only way to save myself and the town from the horrors that had been unleashed. As I approached the entrance to the old mine, the air grew colder, and a sense of dread settled over me. The mine was a gaping maw in the earth, a relic of Enfield's past that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. I paused at the entrance, peering into the inky blackness that lay beyond. Taking a deep breath, I flicked on my flashlight and stepped inside. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing the crumbling walls and rusted remnants of mining equipment. The air was thick with dust, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the cavernous space. The deeper I ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It felt as though the walls were closing in around me, the weight of the earth pressing down on my shoulders. But there was something else, too, a presence that watched me from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. I reached a large chamber, the heart of the mine, where the air was thick with the stench of decay. My flashlight beam caught something on the floor, and I knelt down to get a closer look. It was an old, weathered book, its pages yellowed with age. Opening the book, I found it filled with strange symbols and cryptic passages. It was a journal of sorts, detailing the experiences of the miners who had worked here all those years ago. As I read, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The miners had stumbled upon something ancient, something malevolent, buried deep within the earth. Desperate for wealth and power, they had performed a ritual to summon the creature, binding it to this place. But the ritual had gone horribly wrong, unleashing a force beyond their control. The journal spoke of a way to banish the creature, a counter-ritual that required the blood of the one who had summoned it. But with the original summoner long dead, the creature had remained trapped, feeding on the fear of those who dared to enter its domain. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and the shadows around me seemed to shift and move. I felt the creature's presence, a palpable malevolence that filled the chamber. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized I was not alone. A low growl echoed through the mine, and the creature emerged from the darkness, its three-legged form towering over me. Its eyes burned with a hatred that seemed to pierce my very soul, and I stumbled backward, the journal slipping from my grasp. It lunged at me, its claws raking the air as I scrambled to my feet and ran. The creature pursued me through the twisting tunnels, its movements eerily silent despite its size. The walls seemed to close in around me, and the darkness pressed against me from all sides. Desperate, I remembered the journal's mention of the ritual, and a plan began to form in my mind. I needed to find a way to trap the creature, to bind it once again and break the cycle of terror. My heart raced as I reached a narrow passageway, the walls lined with old dynamite sticks left behind by the miners. An idea took hold, and I skidded to a stop, fumbling for a lighter in my pocket. The creature was closing in, its eyes glowing with a terrifying hunger. I could feel its breath on my neck as I lit the fuse and sprinted down the passage, praying that my plan would work. The explosion was deafening, a blast that shook the very foundations of the mine. Rocks and debris rained down around me, and I stumbled to the ground, my ears ringing from the force of the blast. When the dust finally settled, I found myself in a small alcove, cut off from the main chamber by the collapse. The creature was trapped on the other side, its furious roars echoing through the rubble. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe, to believe that I had succeeded in trapping the monster. But deep down, I knew this was only a temporary solution. The creature was still bound to the mine, still hungry for fear and chaos. As I sat in the darkness, I realized that the only way to truly end this nightmare was to find a way to break the curse once and for all. I needed to uncover the truth behind the ritual, to understand the creature's true nature, and to banish it from our world forever. The explosion had bought me some time, but I knew the creature was far from defeated. Its roars echoed through the mine, a reminder of the malevolent force that still lurked beyond the barricade of rocks. I sat in the darkness, clutching the journal and trying to piece together the fragments of a plan. The miners had summoned the creature with a ritual, one that had gone horribly wrong. If there was a way to banish it, the answers lay within the journal's cryptic pages. I needed to decipher the symbols, to find the counter-ritual that would break the curse and free the town from its grip. The air in the mine was thick with dust, and every breath felt heavy. I turned the pages of the journal, focusing on the symbols and drawings that lined the margins. The more I studied them, the more I began to understand. The symbols weren't just random marks, they were instructions, a blueprint for the ritual that could bind or banish the creature. The ritual required three key elements: an object from the original summoning, a sacrifice of personal significance, and the recitation of the binding words. The object would anchor the ritual, the sacrifice would seal it, and the words would channel the power needed to complete it. But where would I find an object from a ritual that took place decades ago? I remembered the old mines, filled with the miners' tools and equipment. Perhaps something of theirs could serve as the anchor. Cautiously, I made my way back through the tunnels, searching for anything that might fit the description. I found a pickaxe, rusted and worn but still intact. It must have belonged to one of the miners, left behind when the mine was abandoned. It would have to do. The next part of the ritual was the sacrifice. It couldn't just be anything. It had to be something deeply personal, something that carried emotional weight. I rifled through my pockets, my fingers brushing against the photograph of my parents that I always carried with me. The image was worn, the edges frayed, but it was one of my most cherished possessions. The thought of losing it filled me with dread, but I knew it was necessary. The final component of the ritual was the incantation, the words that would channel the power needed to complete the binding. I copied the words carefully from the journal, their strange, ancient language unfamiliar on my tongue. With the elements in place, I returned to the chamber where the creature was trapped. The air was thick with tension, the darkness oppressive and suffocating. I arranged the items in a circle, my hands shaking as I placed the photograph and the pickaxe at the center. As I prepared to begin the ritual, the creature's eyes glowed fiercely in the shadows, its rage palpable. It thrashed against the barrier of rocks, desperate to reach me, to end this confrontation once and for all. I took a deep breath and began to recite the incantation, the words echoing through the chamber like a song. As I spoke, I felt a shift in the air, a gathering of energy that pulsed around me. The creature roared in fury, sensing the power of the ritual, and redoubled its efforts to break free. With each word, the energy intensified, a force that seemed to flow through me, connecting me to something greater. I could feel the creature's rage and desperation, its hunger for chaos and fear. But I also felt the weight of the town's history, the fear and pain of those who had come before me. The creature lunged at me, its claws reaching through the gaps in the rocks, but the barrier held firm. I continued the incantation, my voice steady despite the terror that gripped me. As I reached the final words, the air crackled with electricity, the power of the ritual reaching its peak. I could feel the weight of the sacrifice, the loss of the photograph a heavy burden in my heart. With a final shout, I completed the incantation, the words echoing through the mine like a thunderclap. The creature let out a piercing scream, its form writhing and twisting as the power of the ritual took hold. The ground shook beneath me, the walls of the mine trembling with the force of the binding. The creature was pulled back, its form dissolving into shadow, its screams fading into the distance. As the dust settled, I collapsed to the ground, exhaustion washing over me. The creature was gone, banished by the power of the ritual, but the toll of the confrontation weighed heavily on me. I knew the town of Enfield was safe, at least for now. But the creature's presence lingered, a reminder of the darkness that lay beneath the surface. As I emerged into the light of dawn, I realized the true horror of what had happened. The evil had not been the creature itself, but the darkness within the hearts of those who sought to control it. The Enfield Monster was a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows, waiting for someone to bring them to life. And though the town was safe once more, I knew that the real battle lay ahead, a battle against the darkness within us all, the shadows that threatened to consume us if we let them. The dust settled in the mine, and I lay on the cold ground, breathing heavily, my body aching from the effort of the ritual. The creature was gone, banished back to whatever dark place it had come from, but the weight of its presence lingered like a shadow over my soul. I gathered my strength and stood, feeling the chill of the mine seep into my bones. I knew I had to return to the surface, to let the town know that the creature had been defeated. But as I turned to leave, I felt a strange pull, a nagging sensation that something was still unfinished. Clutching the journal, I retraced my steps through the mine, my flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. As I neared the entrance, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold, a set of footprints, fresh and clear, leading deeper into the mine. My heart pounded as I realized these footprints didn't belong to me, and they were too large to be the creature's. Someone else had been here, watching, waiting. A new fear gripped me as I followed the prints, drawn to the darkness beyond. The path led me to a hidden chamber, one I hadn't seen before. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, the silence oppressive. In the center of the chamber was an altar, ancient and cracked, covered in strange symbols that matched those in the journal. A realization struck me like a lightning bolt: the creature had not been acting alone. It had been summoned by someone, someone who had used it as a tool for their own twisted purposes. The creature had been the terror of Enfield, but it was not the true monster. As if in answer to my unspoken question, a figure stepped from the shadows. It was a man, tall and gaunt, his eyes glinting with a malevolent intelligence. He wore a cloak that seemed to shift and move, as if alive, and his voice was smooth and chilling as he spoke. "You did well to banish the creature," he said, his smile thin and predatory. "But you've only dealt with a symptom, not the disease. Who are you?" I demanded, my voice echoing through the chamber. "I am the one who set this all in motion," he replied, spreading his arms wide. "The keeper of the darkness, the master of the creature you so foolishly thought to defeat." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. He was the true villain, the puppeteer who had unleashed the creature on Enfield. The realization that I had only scratched the surface of the evil that plagued my town was like ice in my veins. "You can't win," I said, trying to muster the courage that had carried me this far. "The creature is gone. The ritual was only a test," he interrupted, his voice dripping with amusement. "A way to weed out the weak from the strong. And you, my dear, have proven yourself quite strong." Before I could react, he raised his hands, and the chamber filled with a dark energy that crackled through the air. The symbols on the altar glowed with an eerie light, and I felt a force pulling at me, drawing me toward the darkness that pulsed at the center. "You see," he continued, "the creature was never meant to be the end. It was merely the beginning, a means to awaken the true power of this place." As the dark energy swirled around me, I realized that the creature's banishment had been part of his plan all along. By defeating it, I had unwittingly unlocked the deeper evil that lay beneath the surface, the real power that he sought to control. Panic surged through me, but I refused to give in. I had come this far, faced the horrors of the mind, and I wasn't about to let him win. Clutching the journal, I began to chant the binding ritual once more, the words echoing through the chamber with renewed strength. The man's smile faltered as the power of the ritual clashed with his dark magic, the energy tearing through the chamber like a storm. The ground trembled beneath us, and the symbols on the altar flickered and dimmed. "You think you can defeat me?" he hissed, his eyes narrowing. "I am the darkness itself." But I could feel the power of the ritual building, the strength of the words resonating within me. I focused on the image of my parents, the town, the lives that had been shattered by his evil, and I poured that emotion into the incantation. With a final shout, the ritual reached its climax, the energy exploding outward in a blinding flash of light. The man screamed, his form disintegrating into shadow and dust, his dark magic collapsing in on itself. When the light faded, the chamber was silent once more. The altar lay in ruins, the symbols broken and powerless. The man was gone, his malevolent presence erased from this world. I stumbled out of the mine, the weight of what I had done settling over me like a shroud. The creature was gone, its master defeated, but the scars of their terror would remain in Enfield for years to come. As I emerged into the light of dawn, I realized the true horror of what had happened. The evil had not been the creature itself, but the darkness within the hearts of those who sought to control it. The Enfield Monster was a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows, waiting for someone to bring them to life. And though the town was safe once more, I knew that the real battle lay ahead, a battle against the darkness within us all, the shadows that threatened to consume us if we let them. The story of the Enfield Monster had ended, but the lessons it taught me would never be forgotten. Evil can take many forms, but it is our choices that determine whether we become monsters ourselves.